are you rich? If you're not rich, how are you going to make me rich?
How do you personally filter through all that noise that comes back to the decisions aligned with your core values?
I'll tell you the thing is, hey, if you're so smart, how come you're not rich?
Everyone is chasing wealth. What do you think people would chase if money didn't exist?
There are two types of pornography. One is where you see figures of other humans and all that, and then there's financial pornography. Warren Buffett's daughter asked for $35,000 because she really wanted to renovate her kitchen. He said, I'll give you $10,000. He said, no, actually, on second thought, I don't think I'll give you that either. He didn't give it.
If you had to teach 3 non-negotiables, life concepts about money to every 20-year-old, what would they be?
I would tell them,
Our very first guest is someone I have known for around 2 years now. And honestly, I have been calling him a hidden gem from day one. Meet Chandru Mahtani, the CEO and head investment director of Inner Circle. He doesn't just manage wealth, he nurtures it. Over billions worth for a very close and trusted group of friends and family, what he fondly calls is his inner circle. But true to the spirit of this podcast, it is not just about amounts. What amazes me every single time I speak with Chandru is his cross domain wisdom. One moment he's talking balanced portfolio and stress free investing. The next moment he's weaving in insights from life, love, psychology, sometimes even physics, health, and philosophy. Always circling it back to our relationship with money. What stands out most is his articulation, which is crisp, precise, and mindful, down to the finest details. Personally, he's gifted me more than just investment advice, a few powerful books that shook my thinking, a beautiful Persian carpet, a piece of art from Iran, each thread telling stories of tradition, patience, and legacy. And now, again, a priceless gift. Your presence, Chandru, as our first guest on my Investing for Cups podcast. What he brings isn't just about money management, it is his meticulous planning woven with an almost effortless charm, and his wisdom, of course, unparalleled. So, yes, by the end of this conversation, you will see what I mean when I say his planning is beyond meticulous, his articulation is unmatched, his charm is, well, undeniable, and his wisdom absolutely incredible. Without further delay, I am delighted and honored to welcome to this podcast Chandru Mahatani, a master of wealth, language, and life. Chandru, welcome to this podcast and thank you once again to be our first guest.
it's a great privilege to be here, but after this introduction, I think I should run for cover because I don't think I can live up to such a magnificent introduction done with such
No,
generosity.
no, Chandru, I have, as I mentioned in my intro, every time I meet with you, I am always in, an awe, right? I mean, because the way you articulate between various domains of life, philosophy, and circling it back to managing money and our relationship with wealth is something that I have always learned and reflected upon. Even when I am not with you, sometimes after meeting with you, it's been a great time that I always cherish. So tell me, before we start, I want to ask you, a few things. You have lived and breathed money, not just about managing your own wealth, but managing, billions of wealth for the inner circle that you call as your family and friends. What, in your view, is the biggest myth in the world about wealth and money?
I'm going to tell you how the name Inner Circle came by, and I think that'll tell you. I didn't write Inner Sanctum because that has religious overtones, but there was the Inner Sanctum in Apollo's temple in Delphi more than 2,000 years ago. And the Inner Sanctum was a place which was completely covered with cloth and there were two words written on it which only the head priest could see. And you know what it was? Know thyself. That is the most powerful. Once you know yourself, then you are free. Then money becomes a tool. It becomes a tool you use, and you use like you use a shovel. But if you start worshipping the shovel, you have lost what should have been something that you use to make it better. It has become your boss.
Wow, this is, see, you're opening it with a bang. You are opening it with a bang. Money, I mean, the way you described it, your articulation is I'm a great fan. I'm sure everyone will be a great fan after watching this. Tell me one thing, on your website, you mentioned 7 key questions
Yeah.
you should ask before you invest with anyone,
Right.
right? Could you share one or two that most people never ask, but absolutely must ask?
I'll give you one question. And this was asked in New York by a Jewish, brilliant businessman. Someone was telling him all sorts of theories. He said, hey, if you're so smart, how come you're not rich? So the first question to ask, are you rich? If you're not rich, how are you going to make me rich? That's the only question you have to ask. And then you ask, have you done it ethically? How do you do it? And if someone tells you he has a black box, so that's wonderful. If you can't explain to me how you do it, I don't want to invest with you. What you have to tell me is show me the mechanics. Let me see the gears, the levers. Let me see what you're doing. And what you understand, then you begin to understand how the money is made, because your money has to be invested with morality, with discretion, and with profitability. And if you don't have that, those are the only questions you have to ask. There are 7 questions. There are many questions. You got to ask them, how good have you been? And don't say, what have the last 5 years been? Say, how long have you been in business? And if he says, well, in my case, I've been doing this for others since 87. Before that, I was doing it since 82. You say, what are your results overall? How bad do you get hit when markets go down? And if he tells you I don't get hit, saying, why are you lying to me? So the whole question over here is you have to have full transparency. And you got to go to someone who doesn't really want your money. Unless, he says, first, before I take you in, let me see, are you intelligent? Do you understand? Will you read a little bit so that you know that the most dangerous place in the world is the stock market on a yearly basis? It's the safest place to be on a 10-year thing. Are you willing to understand what rolling periods are? That means if you're talking about the year 2000 to the year 2010, 2001 to 2011, those are rolling periods of 10 years. In no rolling period since 1820 has there not been a result, even including the Great Depression, because when the value of the stocks went down 80%, the dividend that used to be 5% became 25%. So the safest investment is the long-term investment. If you're doing it short-term, run for cover, because that is where the danger lies.
Interesting, very interesting. One more thing, you spend immense amount of time, you mentioned 99,000 hours on your website,
I
right?
think so.
99,000
It
hours?
may be half an hour more, because this morning on the drive over, I was reading the paper.
You spent 99,000, I took it from your website,
Yeah.
managing wealth. And you also mentioned managing wealth, crisis and cycles. So you also mentioned crisis and cycles, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me what one timeless truth across these 99,000 and half hours that you mentioned about money that no book can teach, but only experience can.
I'm so glad you asked me that question. The thing is, you never time the market. What determines your wealth is your time in the market. There's a big difference. Don't try and say this is a good time to buy, this is a bad time to buy. What you do is you just say time in the market, because the greatest power, one of the 8 great powers that exist, according to Einstein, is the power of compounding. If I were to tell you, take a grain of rice and double that onto the next thing on a chessboard, and people say, well, there are only 64 things. There's not enough rice in the world. in the world to get to 64. It's the power of compounding. You have to do nothing. When Apollo's temple said, know thyself, the biggest enemy to your success is not your competitor, it's you. When you're shaving in the morning because you get distracted, just be calm, stay in the market, let the magic happen.
Amazing, amazing. This is the 99,000
And half an hour.
and half an hour.
I learned this in the last half an hour. Before that, it was all rubbish.
That's a good one. Now, I'll come to the, the thinking part of it. Knowing you, I know that you are a deep thinker. You are a very deep thinker. The only,
You're so kind.
maybe to the extent of you are a very philosophical thinker as well, right? And I've seen you linking finance with a lot of other aspects of life, the psychology. Sometimes you even give me examples of physics, and even philosophy. So what is the one mental model from outside the finance that you often rely on when making your decisions or the decisions for the money that you manage?
Okay. If you look at anyone who's reasonably intelligent, he will tell you there's a convergence. All things come together. If you study physics, if you study finance, if you study medicine, these are all different paths up the same mountain. It comes to the same peak. You can go from the left, you can go from the right. It all comes together. That is the unity. When we talk of the oneness of humanity, that is what it is. So when you study it, the beauty about it is investing teaches you patience. It teaches you kindness. It teaches you how to be calm, to not get overly excited and start screaming, cryptocurrency. Say, what is it? Go back to history. Go back to see since we cannot look into the future, we can look back to the past. I paid for some very expensive studies that went back to 1647. And people say, why do you want to go back? And the data is not all that good from those years, but from 1820 it's pretty good, and from 1870 it's pretty fine. Since you cannot look into the future, see how markets have behaved in the past when disasters come. You learn the same lesson. Be calm, be tranquil, do something that will distract you, and just stay in the market. It always comes back.
But how does it, this advice we keep on getting, be calm and be
Yeah.
this, but it is not always, when we go through some, market turbulence,
Yeah.
and every day we get bombarded with a lot of advice also, Chandru.
Right.
The social media is there. We get distracted to see that. There's a commentary 24/7 that keeps on coming on the news channels.
Yeah.
And then there are WhatsApp groups, family WhatsApp groups, friends WhatsApp groups, all those talking about investing tips and all that. I have my own side of distractions out there, but
Right.
since we have the pleasure
Okay.
of having your wisdom today,
Well,
how do you personally filter through all that noise that comes back to the decisions aligned with your core values?
I'll tell you the thing is, there are two types of pornography. One is where you see figures of other humans and all that, and then there's financial pornography. The problem is all these news stations, all these newscasts, if they were to every day tell you, just stay in the market, don't look at it, stay calm, they would have nothing to say. They need noise to get you involved. Ignore it. Absolutely ignore it. Read it like you would read a comic. Read and react to it? Absolutely not. What you've got to do is when you know that you want to go, let us say, from Dubai to London, you don't take deviations. Well, I'll also stop off at Bahrain and I'll also stop off at Paris and all. You go directly. So do not let them disturb you. Understand one thing. Waves may look like movement, but the sea is one huge massive. The waves rise and they return to the sea. This you must understand. This is just noise. Never confuse noise for intelligence. Where intelligence is, just stay in the market. You have to study what you're doing and do not change your course rapidly, because that will lead to losses. The reason why we get into losses is because we change frantically. We're chasing momentum. Don't chase momentum. Just stay the course.
Amazing. I mean, I picked one word, listen to them as a comic or read them as comic,
Absolutely.
but they all, look very intelligent set of people. How can you take them in a comic sense?
Ask them to show you what they have been able to produce in the last 10 years. Look at Jim Cramer and all these guys. What returns do they give you? It is very easy to get up there and start shouting, Kathy
Kathy
Wood's
Woods.
ARK investment. What is it? It has given you the most massive negative return on the, because if you catch a certain trend, you become a hero. But when that trend changes, you become a zero. Why do that? Just simply ride it out. Stay in your course. You have turbulence. Even if you fly from Dubai to London, there will be bits of the aircraft moves. But you don't say, stop the aircraft, I want to jump out, give me a parachute. You just continue. And you know what will happen? A few hours later, you're sitting in London and having a wonderful glass of wine and you're happy. The whole point is, don't, the biggest enemy, what it said, know thyself. That was 2,400 years ago. That was written in the inner sanctum of a temple, and only the head priest. Once you know yourself, you're calm. See, what does this man know? And if he knew, do you think he would be telling you? He'd be investing in himself. This is noise. You sell noise, but you don't follow it.
But somebody like you with 99,000, it keeps coming back to me, 99,000 worth of hours of experience,
Right.
can feel confident about it. How a 25-year-old or you
Absolutely.
are 60 year young,
Brilliant.
but how a
Brilliant.
25-year-old or 28-year-old think that I have to, I'm feeling so confident in the person, with a C-suite,
Brilliant.
degrees and, positions at various investment
Brilliant
banks.
question.
How can he afford to ignore that?
I'll tell you one thing. If you take a rickshaw driver, and he may be a really good rickshaw driver, and tell him to fly an A380, he'll probably crash it. Would you agree?
Of course.
The first thing you do before you get into something, you study it. And what you study are not these books, the New York Times bestseller, investment advice, the dogs of the Dow, invest in the dogs. You don't do that. You read that because you want to have nice, light comic reading when you're having a glass of wine. But what you do is you go into financial textbooks. You go into financial history. The only way you become rich, you are a brilliant accountant. And when I come to you and ask you for advice, and the advice you give me, set up a foundation on, is based on your knowledge. If you had no knowledge, why don't I go and ask the man who's bringing me the karak chai, how do I set up a foundation? You must educate yourself. And once you educate yourself, you know that the guy who's at the ceiling, he may be there because he's brilliant, or maybe it was his destiny. How many of them do it? What you have to study are guys like Warren Buffett. More than Warren Buffett, you got to study Benjamin Graham, the guy who taught him. You got to have value. And when you have value, the markets come together. It's a weighing scale. It is not a matter of momentum that today it's hot and tomorrow it's not. Apple was almost bankrupt in 1997. It is a giant now. But if you just go after Apple, what you do is you invest in sectors. And when you invest in sectors, it makes no difference what goes up and what goes down. And then you understand something which we have talked about, the efficient frontier, which is usually 32 positions that you take. This, mentally, you would assume if you are in 32 positions and 16 are going up and 16 are going down, you're standing still. That's not the case. Harry Markowitz, with a 17-page document in 1953, when calculators didn't exist, with a pencil and paper, figured it out. And they couldn't prove it properly, scientifically, until 1994. If 6 are going up, the others don't matter. You get 80% of the return if you had invested and all had gone up. Do you know what that is? The freedom to be so wrong and still be right. That is when you understand what the efficient frontier, that is investing. If you go there and say, oh, I'm going to buy, I'm just going to run around, and today this is hot, and tomorrow, India, infrastructure. What do you know on infrastructure? What happens when that cycle changes? What you don't invest for cycles. You invest so that one thing, it's like a seesaw. If something is going up, something should be going down. You know why it should be going down? because when the seesaw changes, that goes up and this goes down. But what you do in between, you do a rebalancing either once a year or maximum twice a year. So when it is up, you are selling. You are not buying. You are selling, and you're buying what is down. So when down comes up, it goes up. So you're making a killing. You're selling high and buying low, as opposed to what most people do the other way around.
So, your style, I have read, I mean, in fact, you also thankfully gifted me some books, and those were timeless piece of wisdom that, and I cherish reading them, and I'm glad that I have read it at the right stage of my life. I wish I had read it 20 years back, but still, I read it, and I've read 50 other books. What you are telling is I found at the last page of those books, and those books were written by the best of the best investors that we have seen. But talking about the general public, I mean, the general public, in my view, juggles between two extremes.
Yeah.
Right? And the two extremes are, one, those who are analyzing and, to the extent that they are overthinkers and, taking the analysis to the paralysis level. And the other set of people that we see all the time is optimist. They see something hot and they jump over it. Correct? So, what do you think is more dangerous between the two?
They're both dangerous because they'll never be rich. You can be as simple as that. Neither is that guy going to get rich, neither is the other guy.
Yeah.
And if he catches a little brief momentum, he's going to be jumping up and down. The most dangerous place, for investment, you know what they are cocktail parties. Because someone says, I invested there and it doubled, I tripled. If something is doubling and tripling, that is not the normal way things grow. If you plant a seed and you go back next morning and the plant is standing this high and then next day is high, something is going weird over here. This is some nuclear plant. It's not, that's the normal rate of growth. The trouble is, the reason why most people, frankly, don't become rich is because they're their own enemy. They're not willing to put it. You don't have to put 99,000 hours into it. The truth of the matter, they say, is normally if you put 10,000 hours, but no one's going to put 10,000 hours. The reason why you put 10,000 hours is you got to read sufficiently deeply so that you have conviction on what you're doing. Conviction only comes from knowledge. The reason why you go to a doctor and he does it, if you ask him, have you done surgery before? He says, no, but this is the first time, but I'm feeling good, I'm feeling confident. You say, get away from me, don't come near me. This is the same thing what I'm saying. Ask the guy, what is your theory? How do you do it? Explain to me. And what is your track record? So don't go with the young guys. The young guys are excited. They may have caught a certain period, a certain growth period, and then they've just done wonderfully. But what happens when things go bad?
But Chandru, I mean, I've gone through my 20s, 30s, 40s, I'm going through 40s now. I mean, what is written in books, we tend to discount it also, being young set of people.
Right.
I mean, the greatest weight that we put is on experience, and that comes with, bit of an experimentation as well. Where what we go through, bit of a trial and error and,
Absolutely.
learning through what we end up doing in our life. And that carries the greatest weight in terms of our conviction, our belief systems and all that. So in your view, how do we get the clarity, the real clarity in life? I mean, by deep reading, by deep stillness, reflection, momentum, or experimentation?
Let me put it this way. If you wanted to read a great book, what would you do? Would you start writing the book yourself, or would you go to a bookstore and say, who are the great writers? Charles Dickens, Tolstoy, this thing. Who do you think will write better, Dickens, Tolstoy, or you? Realistically, you know that. So when you have great minds to teach you, don't be guided by your experience, because your experience is limited to one thing. When you read a hell of a lot on it, and you must read books that are contrary one to the other. You must read Momentum Investment because to know how wrong it is, but you can only know it's wrong if you've read the other stuff. So what you do, you've got to educate your mind. And if you're not willing to educate your mind, then you have no right to be rich. You go and buy lottery tickets and hope that it hits. And if it hits, wonderful. And when it hits, since you don't know how to manage money, you'll probably lose it and you'll be poor again. So this is the beauty of life, that everything comes. You are a greatly successful man because you were driven and you have done this and you've risen to this. Well, but there was work put into it. There were probably sleepless nights. There were holidays not taken. There were birthdays not celebrated. That is the sacrifice to be where you are. So how do you expect to make money? And how do you expect to make a lot of money? Unless you just say, well, I'm going to do this. I am going to follow what cocktail advice I get. Look what happens when real estate is going up. Everyone's jumping up and down. Do you know what happens when real estate goes down? No one wants it. It's absolutely dead. But you forget about it. This is like the man who wakes up with a massive hangover and says, God, I'm never going to drink again. Evening comes, could I have a double shot, please?
Exactly, yeah.
But the whole point is you've got to educate yourself. And this is the tragedy. No one is willing to do it. And when they read these fluffy books, these quick little books, or they'll tune into one of these stations and say, well, Kramer's saying this is a good thing to buy. See, how the hell does he know?
Very interesting. In fact, particularly, I wish I have read a lot of these books. I have read around 50 odd books during the COVID time. I had nothing else to do.
Right.
And, when I was doing CFAs or, the educational qualification, professional qualifications and all that, I've realized what the books that I bought and read, taught me a lot more than the educational books that I have ever gone through my, the CFAs or MBA books.
Right.
So, but that carried, those books carried life experiences. There are only two ways to get it. Either you go through them yourself, right, and ruin your own life,
Right,
or you read the life experiences of others and gain out of it. I think that I've realized, after reading those books and the summary, the juice that you get at the end of those books, with the great storytelling, I think that is something that that has.
Sheetal, if you wanted to talk to Socrates, he's been dead for 2,400 years, but you can still talk to him because his books are there. And his books are so beautiful. Look, he was probably one of the 3 or 4 or 5 greatest philosophers that ever existed. Absolutely brilliant. And he would never tell you what he would ask you the questions. He would pull the answer out of you by asking you the right questions. And yet, as a man, he married a very, very beautiful young girl, much younger than him, I think, and she had a vile temper. I think he was known to be an exceptionally ugly man. And one of his students asked him, there was an area called academia, which is the word academy comes from the area where he used to teach, but that's a different story. So the student asked him, seeing him suffer, he says, but Socrates, tell me, should one get married? And Socrates said, yes, you must, because if you get a great wife, you will be very happy. And if you don't, you'll become a philosopher.
Win-win. Both sides.
This is the same thing. You can talk to great minds.
Yeah.
Why would you limit it to your own experiences? It's like if I want to see great paintings, I wouldn't limit my own paintings. I'd go to the Louvre. I'd go to another art. You see the world. When you see, why would you see in black and white when you can see in color? See the rainbow. That is what education gives you. And when you sit quietly and you read, it becomes like a small distillation. It becomes a fermentation. Because when you read another book, which is often contrary, it becomes the putting together of different things. What you're taking is not knowledge. You're taking a jigsaw. And that's your brain is turning into this magnificent jigsaw that begins to see the whole picture. And when you see the picture, there's no fear. Because you know this is how it was, this is how it is, and how it will be.
Amazing, amazing. You once told me wealth should be a source of calm, not chaos.
Absolutely.
And most people that we see, it is a chaos.
Of course.
And managing this in a very calm way is, I think, I have rarely seen people. I mean, most of the people, most of the groups, there's a lot of noise, lot of chaos. Of course, they are playing with money all the time, But I've rarely seen people, I mean, we see Warren Buffett, of course, he plays all the time, right? And while at the same time makes the most of the wealth as well. So,
That,
so
yeah.
what are the, I mean, I'm again going back to the, to the set of audience which I really want to address to,
Okay.
the young people, maybe my daughter, right? She should know
Absolutely.
about it. What are the two core principles or habits that helps create stress-free wealth?
Okay. Most people want to be wealthy because they'd like to have really fancy cars, a yacht, a mansion, and all that. The first thing they have to understand, happiness is not a place, it's a state of mind. Once you know it's a state of mind, you can be unhappy in Cannes, you can be unhappy in Monaco, and you can be jumping up and down in a small little village in India. So the point is, once you understand that, the need to goes away. And once you stop looking at others and you start focusing inwards, the reason why meditation is good is not because it just stills your mind. It tells you to stop comparing, stop looking. And there will be people richer than you, there'll be people poorer than you. That doesn't matter. What you have to work on is your happiness. And that is a totally different thing. Use wealth as a tool. Don't use it as a hammer like people do. Well, I've got 3 Bentleys and I've got this. So what? Does it make me happy? No. The thing is that at the end, the joy goes away. I think at the end of the day, what you have to understand, there's a certain simplicity in the way you are that gives you happiness. And once you understand that, why does Warren Buffett, he lives in the same home that he bought 40 years ago. He's an amazing man, purely because he never let money corrupt him. Once you become tainted with money and you begin to feel with your living one eye on the audience, like, am I competing well? Am I up there? When you know it doesn't matter because they are living a life, they're following their own path. Follow your own path. And this is why it is essential with money that you read good books, that you understand there's far more profundity. Why would you compare a pool to the ocean? Swim in the ocean. Just make sure the sharks don't come and bite.
But Chandru, easier said than done. The moment your income goes up, your lifestyle goes up.
Sure.
Correct? And when your lifestyle goes up,
Yeah.
how do you differentiate meaningful lifestyle upgrade from a trap of lifestyle inflation? Because a lot of people get into that lifestyle inflation rather than meaningful lifestyle upgrade. So
Very
how to do
simple.
that?
Ask yourself, does it feel good? If you sleep on a 1,000 thread bed sheet, it feels like silk and satin without being that. But do you need it? No. 400 feels equally good. But the point of it all is, if it feels good for you, if you're buying this thing, if you are going to Paris and you're going to Galeries Lafite and you buy, when you stop being concerned about other things, when your gaze turns inward, your desire becomes very, very, very small. You don't need very much. And what happens is, it'll set you free. It'll make you so happy. There's no reason for inflation. You know what happens is, the greatest joy is to know that you can spend and you can vastly spend and vastly outspend the others, but you choose not to do it because you're humble. When you know you can be rude to the man who parks your car or who brings the waiter, but you say, Bete, how are you? Are you having a good day? How long have you been here? You can be cruel and all, but you don't do it. That is when you become a good human being. Not good to congratulate yourself. You're saying, I'm in the process of evolution, but I'm evolving in the way a human being should. When you build a cathedral, you don't build it for yourself to go and pray. You build it as a sign of worship so other people can come and glorify the beauty of nature or spirituality. That is what you do. You build beauty for others. When you build it for yourself, then what are you doing?
But frugality is often misunderstood as stinginess. How
No, it
to
can be.
yeah,
You don't want to do that because the thing is, good food is far more delicious than bad food.
yeah.
The thing is that there's you do not want to make this into some sort of psychotic thing of saying, yes, let me chastise myself, let me whip myself. Why? It's very nice to have good things, but it is your definition of good, not what the world considers good. So the point is, of course, the frugality. It is not only your frugality. If you have children, if you have a wife, and you impose frugality on them, they say, you may be frugal, but I don't want to be frugal. This is like a vegetarian saying, I'm a vegetarian. I'm 80, 90% a vegetarian. But if someone will tell me, no, you can't do it, you say, wait. You go and handle it. So there's a beauty also in a generosity that their children live well, they go to good schools, they fly in comfort, they stay in good hotels, they stay in areas that are safe. Let's not make this either becoming a monk or becoming an emperor. There are very many beautiful stages. The trick in life is to find what makes you happy. You. Not what makes the neighbors happy or what society demands. Once that becomes a definition, you will find that making your family or people you love happy is your greatest happiness. Then you become irrelevant to the equation, because what you become like the water that basically flows into the fields and lets the crops grow. The water becomes the source. It becomes the life source. That will give you real happiness. If you become the life source, if you can educate 3 people, India, wherever, so they can get medical degrees. I'm giving a particular example. They have degrees. If you can pay for a young boy to then become a pilot and have his dreams, you pulled up the whole family. And I guarantee you, that feels far more important than going and spending 3 weeks in Cannes and taking the biggest suite and sitting over there and saying, God, aren't I great? No, you're not great. What you've done, you've indulged yourself. Have you made someone else greater because you were in their life?
This is amazing. Living the life of abundance while at the same time disciplined.
Absolutely.
So that
Why
is
should you deprive yourself?
correct.
This is not that you should say, no, hey, I'll be honest with you. I love books, yeah? But I like hardbacks. They're a little more expensive, but they're nice. There's a nice solid feel to it. So you say, okay, I pay 20 dirhams more for it. Why should I say, no, I can read the same book? Or why don't I go to a library and take a book? Say, no, because I want to make little notes. This is not, you can make a vice out of a virtue by saying, no, I will turn around and I will be hard and I will make my children's life hard. No. Love everyone, including yourself.
This is amazing. We live in Dubai. I see, taking this to something similar concept, but I will ask you a tricky question in between.
Ask me tricky ones. I'll give you a tricky answer.
Yes.
All right.
I'm waiting for the tricky answer. We see everyone chasing money.
Right.
Everyone chasing wealth, right? And it's a hypothetical question, but
Right.
tricky. Yeah?
Yeah.
Everyone is chasing wealth. What do you think people would chase if there was money didn't exist?
Most people would not chase education. They would not chase enlightenment. What they would go is for the physical aspect, which would probably be sex. Well, definitely be sex. And sex would probably be drinks. But the trouble is, they're so tremendously intertwined. You cannot have one or the other, because the point of it all is that you can only drink great wine if you're willing to pay for it. And if you're not willing to pay for it, you're going to drink things that are simpler.
Good that we have money, right? At least something to chase.
Totally.
Better thing to chase.
Much better, because otherwise our wives would have thrown us out to get out of here. So money keeps us safe. So let's chase after money.
Exactly. Okay, taking it to the next phase. When we deal with money, there are mistakes that we do, volatility that comes with it, emotional traps that we get into. And since this name of this podcast is My Investing for Cups,
Yeah.
what are the most common investing mistakes that you have seen time and again repeated, by people, regardless of their age group, regardless of their net worth?
Can I use an example which is slightly naughty?
Please,
Okay.
by all means.
When you have a man, he's had a couple of drinks and he sees a beautiful woman, his big head switches off and his little head starts screaming, right? This is the same thing with money. This is what happens is, if you chase after money, you become the victim. You become the slave to it. What you have to do is money, put it on the leash. But the problem is, We live in a society where everyone is, and in Dubai, there are social strata like anywhere. And a certain social strata means you have a certain, so do it. If it makes your family happy, do it. But don't get polluted with it. Just because someone else is eating venison, deer meat, that doesn't mean you have to eat it. So the point is, you don't deprive others, but you don't have to become depraved in the process. And money has a tremendous caustic influence unless you take it to hear the opera. You can use it. It's a wonderful tool. And people criticize money. They criticize bad hands. Give a lot of money to a young boy, and he will probably drift into company that he shouldn't. He has access to money. He'll probably start drinking. There's nothing wrong with drinking. I drink, so this is not a thing. But the point is, you give him a lot, he might fall into bad company. So understand one thing: you've got to manage your money, and not in the stock market alone. You got to manage it in your wallet. You got to manage it that you're using it for wonderful things, that you are tipping the right people. The guy who brings you the pizza Deliveroo, that poor man, he can't eat that pizza. So give him an extra 10, extra 20. So he gets 30 dirhams and your pizza is 60 dirhams. You have what you have done. You've done the best money that you've spent. That is spending money intelligently, because what you're doing is you're telling them, I see you and I feel your pain. What money can make you, it can make you into a hell of a great human being. Because if you have empathy and you have money, you can do something. If you have empathy and you have no money, you can only offer sentiments and saying, I feel for you, brother, which is good. But it's much better to feel and have a way of making them rise.
Very interesting. Coming to this point, like we are in a city like Dubai, and in these global cities, we have global families, right? Global families where the wealth is across continents, across different cultures and legal systems, right? Where the wealth is spread over all of these,
Sure.
How do you see geography, tax law, compliances, disclosures, all these complexities that we live in shape the way we think about our wealth? How does it shape, our thought process when we are thinking money and managing it?
This is brilliant. This is a brilliant question. There was a guy called Andrew Carnegie. He was the richest man in America. I'm going back about 140 years. He was the guy who formed US Steel. And he put it very well. He said, from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, because the first generation really makes it big. The second one goes wild in living in it. The third one wipes it out. So this is the tragedy of it. So your question here is, when you are spread all over how many cases are there where great wealth? You look at our community, you look at the Sindhi community, you look in any community. How often does money stay? Because what happens is a certain respect, a certain morality, a certain thing hasn't been taught. And this is why you may have it spread all over, and you can have all the foundations you want to pass down but if you have not taught them how to nurture it, they cannot. You can give someone crops, but that doesn't teach them how to grow them in a field. That is where we fail. We do not know how to do that. This is why, in most cases, the businesses that have survived, like the Tatas and the such, they have given it to professional managers, because when you don't have that in joint families, I don't want to blame women, but they becomes like, she bought a 25-carat diamond ring, mine is only 22, and what the hell? This kind of tremendous vibration fractures a family. So when you see all these giant families, know that this wealth will probably not last, because they have not been able to train them on how to build it.
One more thing, from a similar point is, people often say that the government is the most expensive business partner.
Yeah.
How do you see the tax burden? Is it a burden or it's a creative tool, a design tool in your view?
That's a very difficult question to answer, because I remember asking my lawyer, in Toronto, and he was actually a professor at the university. He says, consider it a privilege to pay tax, because he says you're financing roads, you're financing hospitals, you're financing all the great things that makes us think. But what has happened here, what we are seeing now, is when money is not well spent, it becomes a very expensive partner. So what you try and do, and this is very important, you don't evade, you avoid. The minute you start evading, you are doing something which is very ugly. But if you can avoid, because the thing is, what you try and do is pay the least taxes you can, but you try and do the maximum charity you can. Because what happens when you have staff at home, you don't have to go hunting to labor camps or saying, let me go to deep Africa and let me find some poor man. You have people who need. If you can educate the children of your staff, you have done enough. This reminds me of a Jewish guy I knew, very smart man, and he was dying of cancer, and I was very fond of him, and I spoke to him. I said, Uncle, now that you're going, I forget what his name was, but it was probably Saul or something. But he says, when I was young, he was in Toronto. He says, I had a Learjet. He says, when jets were considered big things, now, I mean, every third person has a jet in our community. But yet, he says, I used to fly from Toronto. I'd go to California. I'd go to Houston. I'd go to Dallas, and I'd buy some real estate. And I'd come back, and I'd tell them, okay, now let's close the deal. And if you don't close it in 2 days, the price keeps on going down. You're a tough negotiator. He says, I should have just sat in my chair here, poured myself a good whiskey, and just bought up all the property in this street that I have over here. I'd be richer, and I wouldn't have had to do all this nonsense. So this is the wisdom comes from don't confuse activity with profitability. And this is, we all like the noise that, today I'm here and I'm going to fly to London and then I'm going to fly to Japan. Guys, and I'll be back in 2 days. Don't worry about it. But then I have to go, then I have to go down to Nigeria or wherever. But the point of it all is that you're confusing. Music is made of harmony and beautiful notes strung together. If you don't do that, all you're doing is making a lot of notes. That's not the reason why a symphony is beautiful is because a whole orchestra is playing together. So make your life into a beautiful symphony by having the orchestra play together. Do not confuse noise for music.
So don't consider taxes as burden. They are a burden.
Consider it a burden, but look how well run this country is. I must tell you, if you don't have health insurance, they're not allowed to turn you away from the first thing you go. In most countries, they say, you don't have health insurance? Then please die outside. We don't want you to die here. Here, they will look after you. They will look after you. If you have trauma, Sheikh Rashid Hospital is for the whole GCC. It's one of the top hospitals for trauma care if you are an elder. You are talking of, that is money. So if you pay taxes here, if it comes, you say, okay, what the hell, we're enjoying it. You can leave your wallet outside and not worry about it. What happens is when you live in other places, you live in cities where you are scared to walk, where you pull out money from an ATM and you're looking there, then it is wrong. So this is why I say pay the least possible in those countries, because they're not spending your money well.
Yeah, that's true. We see this flight of people and capital, all the time.
Right.
And a lot of countries, they charge heavy tax. Half
Totally.
of the money you have to pay to the government, and then in return you don't get anything.
Precisely.
And most of the times we see the investors getting frustrated and then moving out of those places.
Totally.
So money will always chase efficiency. And people would ask at some point of time, right, that what are we getting out of that as well. So if that money is inefficiently allocated by the government, capital do move out.
Precisely. Let me put it this way. When you water a field, I'm sorry I use this farming analogy a lot because I like it. When you water a field and you got seeds, beautiful crops grow. Take that same water and throw it on a desert sand. What's going to happen? It's completely wasted. That is where the rage that America is going through right now is, because they feel that their money is being wasted. They're not getting. So the point of it all is,
America, Europe, I mean, we see a lot of time,
Why?
lot of,
Why do you think I live here?
yeah, correct,
I
yeah.
mean, they say you vote with your feet. You
Yeah.
move where you think you're happy.
True, true, true. Coming back to the family, wealth and family succession issues and all that.
Right.
Uh, so, uh, moving into legacy, intergenerational frictions we see all the time.
Right.
Passing values, not just assets, is so important when we deal with this. And how the wealth shape families, how systems and conversations can preserve both love and logic, in a typical family. So, what is more important to pass on, according to you, the assets in that you have, the principles that you carry, or the systems that you have built to the next generation?
It's a wonderful question, but the thing is, principles and systems mean nothing without the assets. So if you have principle system, you got no
Your
assets.
children will hate you.
They say, be good, but we have no money. Doesn't matter. Be good. But the point of it all is, you've got to teach them. When you have children, and when your son turns 18 or your daughter turns 18, and you gift them a Ferrari, you have killed them. There's nothing wrong with the car. It's a beautiful car. But what you have taught them, this is what life is. It is very difficult for when you've eaten a huge lunch. Let us imagine you've had 6 samosas. 6 samosas.
I have to call samosas, I know.
What? Would you still be hungry after that? No. So when you're satiated, the hunger goes away. And when the hunger goes away, you cannot be a great businessman. You cannot. Were successful because the kids that are born off you all will probably have the value of the respect. By the time the grandkids come, they don't know. They've always lived in tremendous homes. They've always flown first class. They've always had suites and all that. So you tell them, let's cut down and say, okay, I won't go for a double bedroom suite. I'll go for a single bedroom. This is how, unfortunately, luxury corrupts. Opulence corrupts. So the thing, how are you going to pass it down? Well, the only way to pass it down is make them work very hard. Make sure you have professional management.
Give them something, but not enough. You
And
have to.
absolutely, you got to need a foundation which does it, and which Warren Buffett's daughter asked for $35,000 because she really wanted to renovate a kitchen. He says, "I'll give you 10,000." He said, "No, actually, on second thought, I don't think I'll give you that either." He didn't give it. Now, this is insignificant sums of money for. I mean, it's insignificant. It's not even. It's not even like it's like half a grain of sand on a beach.
Exactly.
But the point is, he was just trying to say. He's made the head of it is his son, who's a farmer, who had no desire to join the family. He says, because at the end of the day, you have to teach value, and if you don't teach value, it's very difficult to teach value, because if they're living in school, if everyone has the latest PlayStation, and you say, no, bete, now what you try and do, you play with marbles, he's going to say, get out of here. So, by its very nature, money corrupts. And we live in a society where we all want large homes, we want wonderful cars, and if you don't do that, if you deprive yourself, I don't know how good a life that is as well, because the point is, if you always say that I will stay in simpler hotels and I will take a train at night instead of flying first class, I don't know if that gives you a real quality of life. So it's a very difficult question. At the end of the day, what you try and do is you become corrupt, but you hope you don't become super corrupt. That's all.
You have to balance it.
You have to balance it.
But tell me, here you have to pass on to the wealth, otherwise your children will hate you for sure.
That's what they'll come out August.
You have to pass on to the values so that they know how to manage it, they know how to make most out of it, live a life of abundance while at the same time enjoy it. But can you also pass on the processes? Because I lived by certain habits, but the society keeps on changing. There is an evolution also. Can you install the habits also, the process that you have built, which is fine for, say, somebody born in 60s or 80s, but somebody who is born in 2020s or 2000s, can they still take the same set of systems?
Khalil Gibran put it very well. He wrote in the book The Prophet, he says, children are of you, but they are not yours. So you can only do it up to a certain point. If they decide to blow it, you cannot. You simply cannot control. You can control it through trust and validation, but that becomes a form of torture as well. Because if you say that, well, you cannot, I don't know, let's say for any figure, let's say you cannot get more than the figure 10. Who are you growing this for? And you're growing this for your great-grandkids. Do you really know what's going to happen? Today, if you are a lawyer, I would be running for cover because artificial intelligence has taken over so beautifully on that. Within 3 years or 4 years, it'll be. So what are you doing? So you're saying, because I sacrificed, let my children also sacrifice. So maybe you have to just say, I trust your judgment. I brought you up as well as I could, but I'm not going to put a leash on you. I'm not going to have some other man, some lawyer or accountant telling you, you cannot do that. If you really feel you must, then fine. But if you spend it all, you blow it all, then you have to pay the price. Adnan Khashoggi used to claim to be the richest man in the world, and he wiped himself out. And he went into wild excesses. But the point of it all is, he left nothing for his children. He left nothing for anyone. But the point is, that was his choice. So in the same way, I think you've got to try and instill this in your children. You try and instill the virtues of and you try and make sure that they don't get into vices. But you can only do that. You cannot control from the grave.
You can be an advisor. You cannot be a dictator to them, right?
And you cannot control from the grave.
Cannot control,
because the point is, at the end of the day, if you put someone who's controlling their money, so they don't have free access to it, live and let live. And it will go its own course. And if it runs out, they will have to suffer.
But that's the problem. You cannot control them from the grave. Some families I have seen them fighting, particularly if there are multiple children, and then, as you mentioned also, wives comes into play and then throw a different spin to the whole game equation. So how do you guide families to preserve both the legacy as well as the relationship? Both.
You can try, but you will not succeed. This is the truth of the matter. Unless you have a thing, you look at the Rockefeller family or the Kennedy trusts and all that, they're fine, but they've spread into many hundreds of people. So it works, but I think you also have to understand one thing. When you're dead, you have to let go. And love is one thing that you must have the wisdom to say, I love you enough to know I trust you. And if you make the mistake, let it be on you. Let it not be that I deprived you. So loving is something, it's like when you love something, you set it free. You don't clip a bird's wings. You let it fly. It may soar to the top of a tree, or it may just fall down. But you say, I loved you enough to set you free. I never clipped your wings. I gave you the money so you could fly.
In fact, you have already answered my next question. My next question was, I'm coming from a Marwadi background. And, there is a patria in our family.
Right.
They takes most of the shots, most of the times,
Right.
And, it's very difficult. I've seen many families not having any systems, the education or the decision-making ability, power, or experience transition to the next generation.
Right.
Because of the letting go, which never happened at the patria level. So, how do you balance the continuity while gradually letting it go as well before you are in the grave?
Because what you have to do is you've got to die before you die. You've got to pull yourself back. You've got to give the reins to someone so you're still there to say, beta, you don't do it like that.
You become an advisor to the family. You become a guide to the family rather than being the controller at all time. At certain point, what is that point?
That point is when you feel that it is good and you need to pull back fast. If someone says you pull back at the age of 70, how the hell do you know you're not going to be dead in a certain time? You start pulling back as fast as you can. No faster, but as fast as you can. Because that is love. Love is relinquish. let your child grow. If you don't let your child grow, if you're saying, oh, I love my baby, I love it, the toddler stage, let's not teach it language. I love it when my daughter, when she was tiny, used to say Uruguay instead of Uruguay. She's got a master's degree from Oxford University. Should I have insisted? No, I want you to keep on talking in this child babble. When you love something, you let it grow. And you can only let it grow if you're not suffocating it. A plant needs light, it needs water, it needs air. That's what a child needs as well.
Awesome. Moving on to my next phase of queries related to, the emotions, the health, how you balance these aspects,
Right.
and the philosophy part of it as well. You have gifted me books, you have gifted me carpets, piece of art, but most importantly, you have also, gifted that perspective to me, particularly in person, that I have, thankful to you about that.
You're too gracious. It's a pleasure because understand one thing, in the giving to someone who receives well, that is the greatest joy. Because at the end, can you imagine what is knowledge if it cannot be transmitted?
True.
It is nothing but a blocked dam. Water is only beautiful when it flows, otherwise, it becomes stagnant. You allowed me the privilege of sharing what little knowledge I have with you. And that is a great privilege because to speak is wonderful, but to be speak and to be heard, that is the greatest.
True. That is absolutely true. I wish my children hear me as well, equally.
They will. I think you have a wonderful child listening very carefully.
So, what is the life philosophy? Maybe nothing to do with money, right?
Sure.
That deeply shaped how you view wealth. Any other part of your life that shaped you in thinking about wealth as well, and managing wealth as well, which is of course, your
I
profession.
think the idea of wealth shaping is that it gives you freedom to not hurt, because people often use wealth as a weapon that I have something more or I have bigger. It gives you freedom, and I tell you, it's a wonderful thing. It gives you tranquility when you don't have to worry about the electricity bill or rent or whatever. When you can enjoy beautiful things, when you can eat beautiful stuff, when you can go and hear in Verona a 6 hour opera, and not way in the stands, but where you close enough to hear it without the amplification of the speakers, to hear the most noble voices. You're saying that is wealth. That is wealth. And you have in Dubai here, you got this opera house, which once in a while brings you amazing shows. To be able to sit there right in front, and you know why you need to sit in front? Because in your eyes are so encompassing of that all you are seeing, that you're not seeing the walls, you're not seeing other people.
Wow.
You are literally living that is wealth. It gives you the freedom to be, to experience. That is what counts, not all this nonsense. What you experience, and when you can think, and then when you can experience that, you can transmit that to your children. And when they're kids, you take them. My son loves opera. He loves it. My daughter loves good books, and she buys books. And once in a while, she goes and buys from the Folio Society a book these are books that are bound in vellum, and they're bound with silk sheets that go. See, do you know what it is to read poetry and to know that on this sheet it's exquisite? The letters glow. They are alive with the fire the poet wrote 100 years, 200 years ago. That is what wealth is. Everything else is rubbish. And samosas.
We have to order samosas.
No.
Okay, so tell me, lot of people I know, when they start by chasing wealth, which was a necessity at certain point of
Right.
time, they end up becoming very successful,
Right.
and at certain point of time in life, they all they know is making wealth.
Right.
Right? In the process somewhere, the health is lost, the mental peace is lost, there's a lot of stress as well. So how do you see which can people can integrate both in their life and process, rather than trading one for the another? Health,
Is it?
happiness, and wealth.
it's the easiest thing in the world. You know what happens? To eat and still be hungry is the sign of a defective mind and a defective digestion. When you eat, you should be full. So what you have to tell yourself, this is enough. And that comes from mindfulness. When you're in the moment, there's no reason for more. What you're trying to do is fill a bottomless hole. And there is no such thing as enough money. But then there's also no thing as little money. Because if you have peace, if you have what they call shanti, which is a peace that surpasses understanding, not that the peace of quietness, but a stillness which is so deep, it is like a lake that is unruffled by waves. You need no more. You are sufficient to yourself, and wealth becomes irrelevant, obsolete, and unnecessary.
Amazing. And that brings me to the last few sets of questions that we have got.
Please.
And some it could be tricky as well.
Good.
It's okay.
Good.
I'm sure you are prepared for it.
I'm not prepared for anything because what
You're
happens...
prepared to face tricky questions. You know
I'm
that
not
could be
prepared
tricky
for anything. The only thing important in life is what you cannot answer is, first of all, an answer, and secondly, it's a learning experience. When you are asked a question you can't answer, it's because you didn't think about it and you have opened a new channel. That is how Socrates taught. He taught with questions, not with answers. That if you ask the right question, so you ask someone, are you happy? And the person says, he starts questioning, and he says, yeah. So why was that said with that hesitation? What is making you unhappy? It makes you analyze, and that is a good question when you don't have a quick, glib answer.
So if you had to teach 3 non-negotiables, life concepts about money to every 20-year-old, what would they be? 3 non-negotiables.
3.
Tricky. Sorry for the tricky
No,
ones.
no, this is a good question. I would tell them
About money, non-negotiable life concepts about money to a 20-year-old young kid.
okay, I would say work very hard because it'll give you great freedom. Work intelligently and be sure you're not the obstacle in the way, because you will become the obstacle if you will not do it correctly, and you will become an obstacle if you follow crazy advice, if you follow anyone's advice. The only advice you should be following is your own, and your advice can only be good if you have studied it. And if you're not prepared to study it, then you are not chasing after money, you are not trying to make money, you're just being a bloody fool.
This is amazing. So the first one was
I don't
work
remember.
hard. Work hard, I remember. Work hard.
Yeah.
Second is knowledge. And
follow your own advice.
And follow your own advice.
And the fourth addendum I will give, when you have made your money, stop from going to working hard, go to hardly working, because you must savor it. Hardly working is the net result of having worked hard, because then you can savor it.
This is amazing. This is your relationship with money was, as I mentioned at the context of this podcast, hardworking to hardly working. That is what defines the success. And your
Absolutely.
Great. Again, in today's world, it is obsessed with a lot of trends, right? Every day morning you have new trend, and the pace of innovation is also, increase. And sometimes we question ourselves, is this new trend will change the way we used to think yesterday, right? From cryptos to AIs to the next asset classes that we keep seeing all the time. How do you personally decide whether an idea, which you see in today's newspaper, or being talked about a lot, will still hold value in next 5, 10, 20, 30 years of time?
I want to answer you with a quotation by a brilliant writer called Oscar Wilde, who said, fashion is something that is so ugly that they have to change it every 6 months. Fashion keeps this is the same thing with these ideas. They're so ugly, they can inherent values never change. Cryptocurrency may come in, may not come in, but what you don't understand, don't, and never feel the fear of missing out. What you don't understand, you don't do. The simple thing is you have a very clear path forward and nothing changes. The only constant in life is change. But the other constant is nothing changes. That is the other side of the coin. Do you know behind every great truth, the opposite is also true?
Embracing the two extremes?
Absolutely. But not even behind any great truth, the opposite is also true. Think about that, because at the end of the day, what you understand, you must refine your understanding. You cannot change other people. The only thing you can change is yourself. And once you understand that, you're a free man, because what you do to yourself, no one can stop you. That is mindfulness. That is being aware. That is not following trends that this is good. Be like a powerful rock that stands, and the waves come and they splash and they do it. And what happens? They come and they get repelled. And a new wave comes and the rock stands. The rock stands eternally. The waves come and they fade away. Don't confuse the wave with the rock and the rock with the wave.
This is amazing. I follow Morgan Housel podcast, and he talks about things which never changes. He talks a lot about that and the timeless principles. So there are principles which never changes over maybe centuries or thousands of years.
Totally.
But there are trends which keeps on changing. So we get carried away by, most of the time, newspapers, TV channels, they are flooded with the
I told
the
you,
trends.
the TV channels, that's financial pornography. They're showing you crazy figures, up 20%,
True.
up 30%. Ignore this. Ignore the noise. Hear the music. Ignore the noise.
Okay, moving to the last one or two more questions, and we'll close it out after that.
No.
Two quick ones, right? How do you allocate your wealth? What is the asset allocation that you think one should follow in terms of pure play wealth, and also the allocation of the time, energy, and relationship along with wealth?
Okay. The way I allocate wealth is basically I use ETFs and I look for a low correlation. For example, if I'm using large cap stocks in America, I will see what has a negative correlation to that, which would be emerging markets, mid caps or low caps. So it's a study of looking for opposites, not for things that are similar. Because when things are similar, they all go up at the same time. When they go down, they all go down at the same time. So you look for things that are negatives. And what was the last question again, sorry? No, you did the last one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The two questions.
How do I allocate time?
The one is allocation of wealth.
Right.
The second thing is allocation of wealth along with the other aspects of life, which is the time, energy, and relationship.
Okay. In terms of once you've done the asset allocation correctly, you should be spending virtually no time on it. Because the more time you spend on it, you'll want to fine-tune it. Fine-tuning it is a great error. Where your profit growth comes from is when they move out of kilter. If you have large cap and you have small cap over here, when that grows and you rebalance, you're selling off the excess and you're taking the excess and you're putting it over here. So you should spend the least time on it. And what you allocate yourself in improving yourself. But reading, hearing fine music, eating great food, magnificent food, having the most pricey wines you can, and I'll tell you why. When you're drinking great wines, you're drinking the labor of a highly knowledgeable human being who has sat there, looked at each grape and saying, kissed it and squeezed it. Because what you are taking, when you are driving a very fine, expensive car, a car that takes perhaps 2,000 hours to make, when you're driving a Rolls, but you're not driving a Rolls, you're driving the time invested, someone put in there in stitching the leather together. So what you are savoring is time. When you are enjoying a carpet, you are savoring someone's time. A machine-made carpet is made by a machine. A handmade carpet has been hand-stitched. So to not enjoy that is to also have wealth wasted on you. Wealth is there to savor, to enjoy, but not as a hammer to hurt others. And when you can, you bring them and say, come here, let's look at this painting together. Let's go to the Louvre together. And then after that, we'll go out for a great dinner and have some drinks and food. So you are fulfilling all your senses, but you never become a slave to your senses, because your senses are there for you to control. If you become overly involved with it, then you become depraved. You become a man who is seeking the sheer joy of chasing after women, chasing after this. You use senses like a fine piano to make exquisite music, not as something that you end up becoming dominated by them. You control it, not letting them control you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Most of the battle is won at a time when you do the asset allocation.
Absolutely.
I think 95% of the job is
Totally.
done at the asset allocation level. And if you don't allocate it by living life to its fullest, then the wealth is of no use.
You might as well be poor.
Exactly. So you could be very rich in terms of bank balance, but you are not living the life, which is so well said. You have to play, you have to listen to music, do everything that makes you happy and enjoy the abundance.
And you've got to buy hardcover books because there's so much more satisfying to hold. In the end, these are the joys of life. And if you deprive yourself of the joy, there's a beautiful poem written by an Irish poet, one of the great poets. This is about 80, 90 years ago. His name was William Butler Yeats. And he said, too long a sacrifice makes a stone of the heart. So when you keep on sacrificing, your heart becomes stone. It stops living. It loses empathy. So live and let others live. And if you can, help them live a better life by letting them get degrees. Let them build them a house or give them money to build a house. Because in the end, your legacy is not what you left to your kids at all. It's the good you did when you were in this world. The good includes your kids, but you loved someone else's kids like your own.
Truly amazing. The last question to you. This last 1.5, 2 hours has been amazing. You have shared a lot of wisdom to all of us. In fact, if you have to give our audience one single most important takeaway from this podcast, which they should remember, even after they must remember, try to remember even after 10 years from today. Let them forget everything else, no problem. But one single most important point which they should take away from this podcast, what would that be?
The thing is, live in the moment. Live in the now, because if you live in the now, you have no fears or regrets of the past, no fears or terrors of the future that will come. When you live in the now, you are on the maximum level of mindfulness. Let me give you an example. If I were to tell you, imagine a tree, and you imagine a tree, and you stand in front of a real tree, your imagination of the tree is distinct from the tree. So the thing is different from your imagination. But if you can live in the now and actually see the tree for what it is, that becomes a way of seeing life. You're seeing life without judgment. You are interacting directly with it. And that is the greatest thing. There is nothing more to it. Mindfulness is being aware, not caught up with the fears of the past, not the terrors of what the future will bring. There is nothing but the now. And if you can live that, then you are truly alive.
Thank you, Chandru. Amazing piece of wisdom. Live the life to its fullest at the moment that you are living in, right? This is the now. Don't get caught into the past. Don't get carried away by the future, worries of the future. I think that's a timeless piece of wisdom. Thank you very much, Chandru.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I've really enjoyed this discussion. This is my first podcast, to be honest with you. I don't know how I have performed this.
You've done brilliantly.
Whether I know you are
You're
amazing, but for me,
you're
facing the
brilliant.
camera, facing this, preparing for these questions, Whether I was able to be natural or not, I'm not sure. But it's the start of a journey, and hopefully we'll carry through this journey. I'll try to carry through this journey. I could not have had a better start. And
Thank you.
thank
You're very
you,
gracious.
thank you yet again for
you.
your again another gift that you have showered on me.
Not
Thank
at
you very
all.
much.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you.